When Mark suggested switching roles with his wife Jessica for a week, he thought it would prove a point. He didn't expect to uncover the truth behind her bitterness, or how far her resentment had already gone. What started as a simple challenge turned into a brutal wake-up call, and a quiet act of revenge that neither of them saw coming. You don't expect your marriage to unravel over a dish towel. But that's exactly how it started for Mark. He had just come home from a 10-hour shift at the water treatment plant, his boots still damp from the last job in a collapsed sewer line. He was halfway through unlacing them when Jessica's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "I'm not your maid, Mark. I'm done scrubbing this house like it's my full-time job." He looked up, stunned. She wasn't crying. Her eyes weren't soft. They were sharp, focused, frustrated. "This wasn't about a towel, Jess," he said. "I've been at work all day too. You know that." "Oh, really?" She stepped closer. "Sitting in your truck, listening to Joe Rogan and pretending to fix things that never actually break? Must be exhausting." Mark froze. Those words hit harder than he wanted to admit. He unclenched his boots but didn't move. "Is that really what you think I do out there?" Jessica folded her arms. "You leave at 6, come back at 5, and expect dinner and a clean house like it's the 1950s. Meanwhile, I'm in here folding laundry and fighting mildew like I'm auditioning for a cleaning commercial." Mark stood up. Slowly. "I climb into sewer drains, Jess. I spend my days ankle-deep in things people flush and never think about again. That's not a podcast retreat." She scoffed. "And I clean up after you. Your boots leave trails, the shower reeks of whatever you drag in, and the dishes don't wash themselves. You think this is easy? This?" He pointed around them. "You think your job is harder than mine?" She didn't blink. "I think you don't see what I do. I think you come home, check out, and act like I should throw a parade because you're tired." The silence after that was thick. Not angry, worse. Resigned. Neither ate dinner. They lay in bed that night like two people who forgot how to talk to each other. Mark stared at the ceiling, trying to shake off what she'd said. But it stuck. She really believed it. And that's when the idea crept in. Quiet. Focused. Dangerous in the best way. What if she saw it for herself? Not a fight. Not revenge. Just truth. The kind of truth you can't argue with because it sinks in like grease, like cold, like sewer stench. The next morning, Mark brewed coffee. Jessica walked in, scrolling through her phone, tapping at a plate of eggs like they'd insulted her. He set his mug down. "What if we switch jobs for a week?" She didn't look up. "What?" "You do my job. I do yours. Full swap. No shortcuts." Jessica finally glanced up. "You want me to be you?" "Yeah. Put on the boots. Handle the valves. Deal with Carl." She let out a sarcastic laugh. "You'd last one day in here before melting down over laundry detergent." Mark smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe I surprise you." "You're serious?" "Dead serious. I already put in for time off." He hadn't, but he would. Jessica leaned back in her chair, studying him. "Fine. But don't blame me when you mess up the whites. And don't blame me when your manicure gets eaten by an industrial drain cap." It almost felt playful again. Almost. But there was a flicker in her eyes, hesitation. Not fear exactly, but maybe doubt. Not about the work, about him. She finished her coffee and stood. "You'll regret this." Mark just watched her go, his smile fading. Because she thought this would be easy. That he exaggerated. That he wasn't really working. Let her think that. Let her laugh. Because out there, the ground doesn't care what you believe. The rot doesn't care about your confidence. And the valves don't care how clean your shoes are. And if she could make it through even one shift, he'd be the one surprised. But he doubted it. This wasn't a test. It was a revelation. And it started Monday morning. Monday morning arrived like a dare. Mark pulled into the yard just after 7. Jessica in the passenger seat holding a coffee cup like it was armor. She hadn't said much on the drive. Just kept staring at the dashboard, pretending she wasn't second-guessing everything. He handed her a company jumpsuit, thick gloves, and boots 2 sizes too big. "You'll need these," he said. Jessica held the bundle like it might bite. You said you wanted the full experience. She scoffed, but she didn't argue. Carl was already leaning against a maintenance truck, grin wide. Morning, princess. Ready to meet the beast? Jessica turned slowly. Did he just? You'll get used to Carl, Mark muttered. They led her past rusted equipment and barrels marked with faded warning stickers. She glanced around like this was all some kind of hazing ritual. So, she said, what's first? Changing light bulbs? Sweeping the lot? Carl chuckled. Mark didn't answer. He just walked to the back of the warehouse and opened the steel hatch to the lower maintenance chamber, the industrial sewer pit. Jessica peered down. The stench hit her first. Her hand shot to her face. Oh my God, what is that? Welcome to Monday, Carl said. She staggered back a step, face twisting. No, that's not real. It's real, Mark said. And it's clogged. Jessica stared into the dark. You're joking. Nope. This has to be cleared manually, or the runoff backs up and floods the entire lot. That's the job. Carl tossed her a face shield. Don't worry. Tuesday's worse. She stood there, frozen. Not just because of the smell, but because this wasn't what she'd pictured. This wasn't wrenches and walkie-talkies. This was something else entirely. Mark watched her weigh it. Pride against disgust. Ego against the awful truth. Is this even legal? Barely, Carl said. But welcome to sanitation. She went down the ladder. Slowly. Mark followed, not saying anything. It was her choice now. The next 30 minutes were a disaster. Jessica gagged, cursed, slipped, flinched. Carl tried to keep things light, but even he stopped cracking jokes after she dropped a tool into the muck and nearly threw up trying to retrieve it. She made it 7 minutes before climbing out, gasping for air, trembling. Mark didn't say, I told you so. He just handed her a bottle of water. She waved it off. I didn't think, she started. I mean, I knew it'd be dirty but not. It's okay, Mark said. You'll get used to it. But he knew she wouldn't. Not really. Because this wasn't just physical. It was mental. This was the part people never saw. The moment when pride runs headfirst into reality and folds. The ride home was silent. Jessica didn't eat dinner. She went straight to the shower, locked the door, and stayed there for over an hour. Mark didn't follow. He cleaned the kitchen, vacuumed, and folded laundry until everything was perfect. Not to show off, but to hold up his end of the deal. Day 2, the job was worse. Carl had them hauling pipe through a trench site with unstable footing and burst lines. Jessica didn't complain. She didn't speak at all. Just kept her head down, sleeves rolled, doing the bare minimum to keep from collapsing. At home, Mark scrubbed the house top to bottom. Baseboards, fans, grout. He hit everything she ever said he ignored. By the time she walked in, the place was spotless. She tracked mud through the hallway and stood in the doorway, soaked, dirty, and stunned. You didn't clean, she snapped. Mark looked up from the couch. Actually, I did. She looked around, saw the gleaming countertops, the perfectly folded towels, and her expression shifted. Confused, defensive. You think this is funny? Mark stayed calm. I think it's exactly what you expected from me, right? She didn't respond, just turned and walked down the hall, boots leaving streaks of grime behind her. That night, Mark heard her cry in the shower. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet, exhausted sounds from the other side of the wall. Wednesday broke her. A pressure valve blew near the overflow trench. Jessica caught the brunt of it, sewage, grit, and sludge. It hit her full force. Mark got a text from Carl. Might want to check on your girl. When he got to the site, she was just standing there. Not moving. Covered in filth. Soaked to the bone. Her helmet crooked, gloves gone. Her hands trembled. Her face was blank. Carl didn't smile this time. Mark walked over without a word, wrapped his jacket around her shoulders, and led her back to the truck. No one said a thing. Not Carl. Not the crew. This wasn't a joke anymore. Jessica didn't speak the whole ride home. She just stared out the window, her face slack, her eyes distant. She climbed the stairs and disappeared into the bathroom without a word. Mark stayed downstairs, hands folded. Not angry, not smug, just waiting. He knew this wasn't about who could last longer. It was about what she saw now, what she could never unsee. The weight, the exhaustion, the work that didn't end when the shift did. And that was only halfway through the week. Jessica didn't talk the next morning. She barely moved. She sat at the kitchen table in silence, cradling a mug like she couldn't remember how to drink from it. No makeup, no sarcasm, no fire, just exhaustion. Mark packed her a lunch, slid the brown paper bag across the table. She didn't take it, but she nodded barely. That was enough. Carl didn't text that day. He called. "She's not okay," he said, voice lower than usual. "She's still trying, but it's like watching someone on autopilot. You might want to come down here." Mark dropped the dish towel, grabbed his keys, and headed straight to the job site. It was a trench project near the South Overflow Basin. When he arrived, he spotted her immediately. Standing in ankle-deep muck, soaked to the skin, arms limp at her sides. She wasn't moving, wasn't talking, just there. Her helmet sat askew. Her boots were half submerged, and whatever had splashed onto her was dark, sticky, and smelled like it belonged in a biohazard bag. Carl met him at the gate. Pipe gave out again. High pressure. She caught it all. Mark didn't say anything. He just walked toward her. Jessica didn't look at him, didn't blink. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes glassy. She looked like someone who had finally run out of fight. He took off his jacket, wrapped it around her shoulders. Still nothing. He gently took her hand, ice cold, sticky, and led her back to the truck. No one stopped them. No one joked. They just stepped aside, silent. The drive home was slow. The kind of slow that isn't about traffic but about not knowing what to say. Jessica leaned against the window, eyes unfocused. She didn't cry. Not until they pulled into the driveway. Then her chin quivered, just slightly, enough to crack the mask. She stepped inside, went straight to the bathroom. Mark didn't follow. He just sat on the edge of the couch and waited. She didn't come out for nearly an hour. When she finally did, wrapped in towels, she looked smaller. Not physically, but everything else. Her voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry," she said. Mark didn't respond. "I mean it," she continued. "I didn't know it would be like that. I thought I was strong. I thought I understood hard work. I thought you were exaggerating." Still, he said nothing. Jessica sat down next to him, careful, like even sitting hurt. "I didn't respect it," she said. "Your job, your effort. You." Mark looked at her, waiting. "I thought coming home tired meant you were dramatic. I thought I was the one doing everything right. But out there." She stopped, swallowed. "I've never felt so useless, so invisible. The way people looked through me, the way the job just kept going no matter how slow I was, how tired. No one cared." Mark finally spoke. "Welcome to it." She nodded. "I get it now." Mark looked away, his jaw tight. "You thought I was taking the easy way out." Jessica didn't deny it. "You left this house thinking you'd be the one proving a point," he said. "Instead, you came back and saw what it actually takes just to keep things standing." She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "I judged you for things I didn't even try to understand." A long silence passed between them. "I can finish the week," she said suddenly. "I will, if that's what you want." Mark shook his head. "No, I don't want you to finish it. You don't have to anymore." Jessica looked at him, surprised. "This was never about breaking you," he said. "It was about you seeing it, feeling it, understanding why I come home the way I do." "And I do," she whispered. "I really do." They sat like that for a while. No victory speech, no gloating, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after something big breaks, and something else begins to rebuild. That night, Jessica made dinner. Not because she had to, not because she was making up for anything, but because it was something she could do. And when she set the plate down in front of him, she didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Mark looked up, saw something new in her eyes, something that hadn't been there before. Not defeat, respect. And maybe that was all he'd ever wanted. Thursday morning was the first time Jessica hesitated at the door. She stood there, work boots in one hand, coffee untouched on the counter. Her movements were slower, more deliberate, like someone walking into a storm they couldn't avoid. She didn't complain, didn't ask for a break. She just left without looking back. Mark watched her go, then turned back to the kitchen. He wasn't proud. He wasn't angry, just aware. Aware of what the week had done to both of them. He vacuumed the living room, wiped down every surface, and washed dishes that didn't really need washing. Not out of obligation, but because he finally understood what those small things cost when no one sees them. At noon, Carl called again. "She's not hurt," he said, "but she's done." Mark didn't ask for details. He just grabbed his keys and headed to the site. He found her sitting in the cab of one of the parked trucks, arms wrapped around herself, staring at nothing. Not crying, not panicking, just still. He climbed in beside her. "Pipe didn't burst this time," Carl had said. She just froze, like her brain checked out. Jessica didn't acknowledge him at first. Then finally she spoke. "I couldn't do it." Mark didn't respond. "I tried. I showed up. I even thought maybe if I just pushed through today, I'd finally catch up. But I can't." Mark leaned back in the seat. "It's not about finishing." Jessica turned her head. "Then what was it about?" He looked at her. "Seeing me. Seeing what this takes." She blinked slowly. "I saw it on day one. I just didn't want to admit it." They sat in silence. The kind that doesn't demand words. Back home, Jessica went straight to the bedroom. Mark didn't follow. He finished cleaning, started dinner, and waited. She emerged an hour later. Showered. Different. "I've been wrong," she said. "About a lot of things." Mark let her speak. "I thought effort only mattered if it was visible. If it looked a certain way. I thought I was the one keeping everything afloat, and that you were just coasting." She shook her head. "But now I know the truth. You were drowning too. You just got quieter about it." Mark set down his fork. "I never wanted you to suffer. I just wanted you to understand." Jessica walked over and sat across from him. "I do now. Not just the physical part, but the part where no one notices what you do until you stop doing it." He nodded. "You've been invisible in your own house," she said. "And I made it worse." He didn't correct her, because it was true. She leaned forward. "Let me help now. For real. Not as a chore. As your partner." Mark studied her face. There wasn't a trace of pride left. Just sincerity. And fatigue. "You're not weak," he said. "You showed up. You took the hit. Most people wouldn't have." Jessica looked down. "I didn't last." "You didn't have to. You lasted long enough to see it." That night, they sat on the couch. Not like strangers waiting to win an argument, but like teammates relearning how to trust each other. Mark didn't have to explain the pain in his shoulders, the way his hands cracked, the tired glaze he wore after a shift. She'd seen it now. She'd worn it. And Jessica didn't have to list the number of things she did around the house each day. He'd done them. He knew. The resentment, the assumptions, they weren't gone, but they had lost their power. What was left between them now wasn't blame. It was clarity. They didn't speak much that evening. But for the first time in months, they moved in sync. Cleaning up after dinner, folding a few towels, checking the locks before bed. Small things. But they mattered now. Friday morning, Jessica didn't gear up for work. She brewed the coffee, handed Mark his thermos, and kissed him before he left. No tension. No edge. Just respect. And when Mark climbed back into his truck, the smell of industrial grease already clinging to his jacket, he realized something had shifted. Something that wouldn't go back to how it was. This wasn't about who did more. It never had been. It was about finally seeing each other. And that had taken a full week, one breakdown, and a blast of raw sewage. But they'd made it. Together. The following week, life didn't return to normal because normal had changed. Mark was back on the job, knee-deep in the same rot and grind he'd known for years. But now, when he came home, something was different. The silence didn't greet him at the door like it used to. Instead, Jessica met him with small things. A question about his day, a fresh towel left out, dinner still warm. Not because it was expected, but because she wanted to. She didn't pretend to understand everything. But she respected it now. Every scar on his knuckles. Every sigh when he sat down. Every time he quietly took off his boots at the door, so he wouldn't track the day's grime through the house. She saw it all differently. One evening, after a long shift fixing a ruptured line in the rain, Mark stepped into the kitchen to find a note taped to the fridge. "You fix what others ignore. That includes me. Thank you for not giving up on us." No signature. None needed. Jessica didn't finish the full week on the job. She didn't need to. The few days she spent out there taught her more than any conversation ever could. But what mattered most was how she responded after. She didn't shut down or bury it. She leaned into it. She joined Mark in his world. Not physically, not in a jumpsuit, but emotionally. She asked better questions. She listened. She adjusted her own rhythms to match his where she could. And Mark did the same. Now that he understood her daily grind, he noticed the things he once overlooked. The mental load of keeping a household moving. The repetition, the pressure to stay on top of it all. The way effort often went unnoticed until it stopped. It wasn't about keeping score. That had been the mistake from the beginning. The fight hadn't started over chores. It started over feeling unseen. On both sides. Took hardship, failure, and humility to realize that. One Saturday, Mark found Jessica in the backyard, pulling weeds. Not glamorous work, but steady. He joined her without a word. They worked side by side until the sun dipped low. No talking, no tension, just quiet cooperation. When they finished, Jessica stood up and said, "We make a good team when we're not trying to win." Mark looked at her and nodded. "We were never supposed to be opponents." Later that night, curled up on the couch, she leaned into him. "Do you think we needed to go through that?" she asked. "I don't know," Mark said. "But I know we're different now. And better." She nodded. "I was blind, Mark. To everything." He shook his head. "No, you just hadn't seen it yet. Now you have." That was enough. No more lectures. No more challenges. Just a shared understanding that had been hard-earned and quietly sealed. They didn't become perfect. Some days were still rough. Arguments didn't vanish. But they changed shape. They came from a place of respect now, not resentment. And when they did argue, both of them remembered the week everything cracked, and how they rebuilt from the pieces. The towel that started it all? Still in the kitchen. Mark never moved it. Jessica never threw it out. It just hangs there, quiet, simple, clean. A symbol of what almost broke them, and what finally brought them back.